Welcome to Japanese Sleep Whispers, your sanctuary for peaceful nights and gentle dreams. Here, you will find calming bedtime stories inspired by the timeless beauty and traditions of Japan. Each story is read slowly in a soothing voice, accompanied by natural sounds such as flowing rivers and the tranquil rhythm of shishi-odoshi. Whether you seek relaxation, relief from stress, or help falling asleep, these tales invite you to drift away into a world of serenity. Imagine quiet temples, moonlit gardens, and the whispering bamboo forests as you listen. If you'd like these soothing stories to be part of your nightly routine, consider subscribing so they're always with you when you need them. Subscribe and let these stories be your nightly ritual of calm and rest. Thank you for being here. May you always find peace in every moment. A quiet Kyoto in autumn rain. Prologue: the whisper of rain. The first sound is rain. Soft, steady, unhurried, falling over the old city like a secret being spoken to the earth. It slides across tiled roofs, gathers in the narrow gutters, and flows into small streams that wind through the cobblestone lanes of Kyoto. The scent of wet wood, earth, and faint incense lingers in the air, a scent both ancient and new. The traveler steps down from the bus at the edge of the Gion district, the handle of a worn suitcase in hand. A thin mist curls around the lanterns hanging outside small shops. Their paper shades, pale white and vermilion, glow like moons caught between worlds. Somewhere, a temple bell tolls once, twice its deep note spreading gently through the rain. It is early evening. The season has turned, autumn has come. Leaves, red and amber, cling to branches slick with water, trembling with every drop that lands upon them. The traveler lifts their gaze toward the sky, a wide canvas of gray silk, folded and layered, and breathes in the coolness that tastes faintly of metal and pine. The rain does not fall in a hurry. It invites the world to rest. The traveler walks slowly down a narrow street. Wooden townhouses line both sides, their latticed windows half open, letting out soft glows of amber light. Somewhere behind those windows, someone is cooking rice. The faint sound of a kettle whistle joins the rhythm of rain, a domestic symphony of peace. With every step, the traveler's shoes darken from the damp stones. They have come far, not only across distance, but through the noise of years, through the hurried rhythm of cities that never sleep. Here, in this quiet rain, that noise begins to fade. The traveler does not rush. They listen to the sound of a shutter closing gently, to the murmur of water beneath the eaves, to the deep, living silence that hides between every raindrop. It has been a long time since the traveler last heard silence. At the corner of a narrow lane stands a small machiya, an old wooden townhouse with sliding doors and a single paper lantern swaying before it. The lantern bears 2 brushstrokes, Jing Shin, quiet heart. The traveler hesitates before the door. They have no plan, no reservation, no destination beyond the need to rest. The rain gathers on the brim of their hat and drips softly onto the step. The paper door slides open without a sound. A woman in a simple gray kimono appears. Her hair is silver, her posture gentle. She looks at the traveler not with surprise, but with calm recognition, as though she has been expecting this arrival since long before the rain began. "Welcome," she says, her voice carrying the warmth of tatami and tea. "You've arrived just as the evening deepens. Come in. The rain will take care of the rest." The traveler bows slightly, unsure of what to say, and steps inside. The room smells faintly of cedar and matcha. A small hearth burns in the corner, the embers whispering. A kettle hums quietly beside it. The woman gestures toward a cushion beside the low table. The traveler sits, feeling the warmth of the tatami beneath their palms. "You have traveled far?" she asks, pouring tea. The liquid shimmers green, like a forest seen through mist. "Yes," the traveler replies softly. "Far enough to forget where I began." The woman smiles, emotion so light it barely disturbs the stillness. "Then Kyoto will help you remember not who you were, but how to be still again." Outside, the rain deepens. It strikes the roof like 1,000 small drums, each note distinct, yet blending into one long, unbroken sigh. The traveler lifts the cup, steam brushing their face like a whisper. The first sip tastes of earth, of warmth, of something quietly eternal. Hours pass unnoticed. The rain does not change, but the night folds itself around the house like a soft cloak. The woman prepares a futon in a small tatami room overlooking a tiny courtyard. There, a single maple tree stands, its leaves glistening under the rain, each one trembling like a secret word. "Rest," she says. "When you wake, the city will still be here, breathing softly with you." The traveler lies down. The futon's cotton is cool against their skin. The paper doors slide shut, leaving only the sound of rain and the distant bell from a temple somewhere beyond the fog. At first, the traveler cannot sleep. Old memories drift in the crowded trains, the office lights that never turned off, the constant hum of lives rushing past one another. The rain continues, a patient rhythm that begins to wash those memories clean. One by one, the noises dissolve. The city of the past melts into the city of now. There is no hurry here. No expectation. Only the sound of rain and the faint scent of tea. The traveler's breathing slows. The body remembers how to rest. Outside, the maple's branches sway. A droplet falls from one leaf to another, then another, until it meets the stone basin below, a clear tone, delicate as a bell. A moment later, another drop follows. And another. Each sound is distinct. Each one part of something larger, a quiet conversation between earth and sky. Sometime deep in the night, the traveler wakes briefly. The rain has softened, almost stopped. Through the thin paper walls, moonlight presses like water through silk. The courtyard glows faintly silver. In the stillness, a single sound rises, the con of a distant temple bell. Once, twice, then silence, so vast it seems to breathe. The traveler listens until even that fades, until all that remains is the heartbeat, slow and calm, aligned with the rhythm of the rain's memory. They whisper to no one in particular, "I am here." The words dissolve into the air, carried away like mist. Dawn comes quietly. The rain begins again, but softer now, a lullaby rather than a song. The city wakes not with alarm, but with breath. The air smells of earth, of pine, of new beginnings. The traveler rises and slides open the paper door. The courtyard is bright with dew. A small bird hops along the stone path, shaking rain from its feathers. The maple leaves, still wet, shimmer in hues of rust and gold. The woman stands nearby, sweeping fallen leaves into neat piles. She looks up, smiles faintly. "Good morning," she says. The rain continues. "Yes," the traveler replies. "But it feels lighter." She nods, tapping the broom once against the stone. That is how Kyoto speaks. The rain doesn't end. It simply learns to fall more gently. Later that morning, as the traveler prepares to step outside, they notice a small scroll placed beside their belongings. The paper is pale and thin, written in delicate brush strokes. "Listen to the rain. Each drop knows your name." They look up, but the woman has already gone, her footsteps fading down the corridor. The traveler folds the paper carefully, slipping it into their coat pocket. Outside, the world glows with quiet silver. The air hums with the scent of stone and tea and fallen leaves. The traveler closes their eyes, breathes in, and takes the first step into Kyoto's endless rain. The rain greets them with 1,000 soft voices, each one saying the same thing: "Welcome home." And so the story begins, not with an arrival, nor a departure, but with a moment of stillness, held gently in the palm of rain. Chapter 1: A Lantern by the Gate. The morning unfolds like silk, slow, quiet, and pale. Mist hangs low over Kyoto, blurring the sharp lines of rooftops and temple walls. The rain from the night has softened into a faint drizzle, each droplet catching light as though reluctant to let go of the dawn. The traveler steps outside the machiya, closing the wooden door with a sound so small it becomes part of the air. The street beyond is narrow, lined with stone that glistens like river water. A cat sits on a doorstep, tail wrapped neatly around its feet, eyes half closed. For a while, the traveler simply stands and listens. There is a pulse beneath the silence, the hum of the city waking not with noise, but with breath. Somewhere, a kettle whistles. Somewhere else, a temple bell rings, deep and distant, its echo folding into the mist. Kyoto in the morning is not a place one merely sees, it is a feeling, slow and deliberate, woven from rain and wood and memory. The traveler begins to walk. With each step, their reflection ripples faintly in the puddles that line the path. The rain is too light for an umbrella, yet too constant to ignore. It touches the traveler's face, the back of their hands, the collar of their coat, each drop a quiet greeting. The scent of wet cedar drifts from somewhere unseen. A faint trace of incense follows, carried from a nearby temple whose roof hides behind layers of fog. The traveler follows the scent without intention, guided by curiosity rather than a plan. Soon, the narrow lane widens into a small courtyard framed by low stone walls. At its center stands a wooden gate, weathered, strong, and slightly open. And hanging from that gate, swaying gently in the breeze, is a single paper lantern. The lantern is old, its surface patched and yellowed by time. Yet the calligraphy upon it, two flowing characters brushed in bold black ink, remains alive with energy. The characters read Deng Xin, heart of the flame. The traveler pauses beneath it, watching how the light inside flickers, its glow trembling against the thin paper skin. It is not bright, not meant to banish darkness, but to soften it. Around it, the rain falls more slowly, as though unwilling to disturb the calm it creates. There is a small temple beyond the gate, its steps slick with moss. No signboard, no tourists, no sound except the gentle tapping of rain upon bamboo gutters. The traveler ascends slowly, fingertips grazing the cool wood of the railing. At the top, a monk sweeps fallen leaves from the veranda. His robe is deep gray, the color of quiet water. He looks up as the traveler approaches, his expression neither surprised nor curious, only peaceful. "Good morning," the traveler says softly. The monk nods once, continuing to sweep. After a moment, he speaks. His voice is low, steady, carrying the rhythm of someone who has spoken few words but meant each one. "The rain has no intention," he says. "Yet it cleanses everything." The traveler tilts their head, unsure if they expect an answer. "I came here without intention," they reply. The monk smiles faintly. "Then you have arrived in harmony." He leans the broom against the wall and gestures toward the veranda. "Sit. The morning is generous today." The traveler removes their shoes and steps onto the polished wood. The surface is cool beneath their feet, smooth from generations of footsteps. From here, the city stretches faintly below rooftops rising through mist, distant mountains wrapped in cloud. The sound of the rain fades into a soft background hum, like the breathing of the world itself. The monk pours tea into 2 small cups. The steam curls upward, carrying the fragrance of roasted barley. They drink in silence for a while, listening to the wind rustle through the bamboo beyond the wall. Finally, the monk speaks again. "Do you hear it?" he asks. "The rain?" "No," he says gently. "The moment between the raindrops. That is where peace lives." The traveler closes their eyes. The air hums with tiny sounds, water dripping from eaves, the distant crow of a bird, the sigh of leaves shifting in the breeze. And between those sounds, there is space vast, unhurried, almost luminous. "I think I hear it," the traveler whispers. The monk smiles again, more in his eyes than his lips. "Most people fill that space with thought," he says. "But you can rest in it, if you wish. It asks for nothing." They sit together without speaking. The rain slows further, the mist lifting slightly to reveal the gentle curve of the temple roof. 2 sparrows hop along the railing, shaking droplets from their feathers. The lantern by the gate sways once, twice, before settling again into stillness. The monk finishes his tea and sets the cup down with care. "This temple has no name," he says. "It was forgotten long ago. But those who find it tend to arrive when they need to stop moving." The traveler glances toward the path below, where the world waits beyond the gate. "Then perhaps I was meant to find it." The monk nods. "Or perhaps it found you." He rises slowly, bowing once before stepping inside the main hall. The traveler remains seated, eyes drifting over the patterns of the rain. Each drop falls, breaks, disappears, yet the surface of the wood remains the same. Impermanence, the traveler thinks, has a quiet grace when it is not resisted. A small chime sounds from within the temple, followed by the faint scent of incense. The traveler stands, stretching gently, and walks back down the steps. The rain has nearly ceased. The lantern at the gate still glows, though the daylight now softens its fire. At the gate, the monk's voice carries once more, not loud, but clear. "When you walk, let your steps be light," he says. The earth already remembers your weight. The traveler bows slightly, unsure whether to answer. They pass beneath the lantern and return to the street, the monk's words lingering in the cool air. The day unfolds without hurry. The drizzle fades to mist, and the mist to sunlight diffused through thin clouds. The traveler wanders through Guyon's narrow alleys where the wood of old teahouses gleams like polished amber, and paper lanterns sway outside doorways, reflecting in puddles that ripple with each passing breeze. There is a beauty here that does not demand attention, it simply exists, waiting to be noticed by whoever slows down enough to see it. The traveler watches an elderly man feeding koi in a small pond behind a stone wall. The fish rise, their scales catching pale light, mouths opening and closing like the rhythm of the world's oldest prayer. Nearby, a small child in a yellow raincoat laughs as she jumps into puddles, her mother watching fondly beneath an umbrella. The laughter blends with the rain, two sounds of joy born from the same sky. By late afternoon, the traveler finds a bench beneath a large ginkgo tree. Its leaves, bright gold, fall gently whenever the wind sighs. Each leaf lands softly upon the wet stone, creating a mosaic of light and time. The traveler closes their eyes again. The monk's words echo faintly the moment between the raindrops. They breathe deeply, letting the quiet of Kyoto settle into their chest. There is no urgency here, no destination to chase. Only the soft pulse of rain, the slow drift of wind, the stillness of being. When they open their eyes again, the sky is deepening toward evening. Lanterns along the street begin to glow one by one, amber lights blossoming in the dusk. Among them, the traveler sees a familiar one at the far end of the path, the same design, the same characters, Deng Xin, part of the flame. It flickers gently, guiding the way forward. As the traveler walks toward it, the first drops of evening rain begin again. They fall softly, as though the sky remembers the rhythm of the morning. The lantern's glow trembles, reflected in the wet stones at the traveler's feet. Each step feels lighter now, the monk's words echoing quietly within. The earth already remembers your weight. And in that thought, the traveler realizes something simple and profound: they are not merely walking through Kyoto. They are walking with it. The rain, the lanterns, the mist, the faint chime of bells all moving together in one gentle breath. The traveler stops beneath the nearest lantern and looks up. The paper skin glows warm against the gray evening, fluttering slightly in the breeze. Within the light, a moth circles once, twice, before resting on the lower rim, still, content. The traveler smiles. Somewhere far away, a temple bell begins to ring slow, deep, and endless. They close their eyes, breathe in the rain-scented air, and whisper thank you. The city answers not with words, but with the soft shimmer of rain. And once more, Kyoto falls silent, beautifully, completely, endlessly still. Chapter 2: The Tea House Beneath the Maple Tree. By late morning, the rain has thinned into a mist that barely touches the skin. The traveler walks along a narrow path that winds through the eastern hills of Kyoto. The stones beneath their feet are dark and cool, and the air carries the fragrance of moss and damp earth. Overhead, maple branches arch like gentle hands, their leaves turning shades of amber, scarlet, and fading gold. When the breeze stirs, the leaves fall slowly, not as if letting go, but as if offering themselves to the earth. Each one lands with a sound softer than breath. The traveler follows the path without thought, drawn onward by the rhythm of their own footsteps. The city behind them fades into a tapestry of muted colors and quiet rain. Ahead, the forest deepens, a sanctuary of sound and stillness, of water murmuring between roots and stones. After some time, the traveler notices a faint glow between the trees, a small light, steady and warm. As they draw closer, the shape of a wooden tea house emerges, nestled at the edge of a grove where the maples are brightest. A simple sign hangs above the door, its calligraphy brushed in elegant, fading ink. Momijion, the autumn leaf retreat. The tea house is small, built of aged cedar and paper screens that breathe with the wind. Outside, a low stone basin gathers water from a bamboo pipe. The sound of each drop echoes softly, a measured rhythm, patient and eternal. A woman stands near the entrance, sweeping fallen leaves from the step. Her hair is white, tied in a loose knot, and her kimono bears the same muted red as the maple trees. When she sees the traveler, she smiles, a smile that feels less like greeting and more like recognition. "Good morning," she says. Her voice is quiet, like the sound of rain remembered. "You've come through the forest just as the colors are at their kindest." The traveler bows slightly. "It's beautiful," they say. "I almost didn't want to reach the end of the path." She laughs softly. "Then you already understand tea. Come in, before the wind changes." Inside, the tea house is dim and warm. Tatami mats cover the floor, and the faint scent of roasted tea leaves lingers in the air. The traveler sits beside a low table near the window, where the maple branches lean close, their reflections rippling faintly in the rain-streaked glass. The woman moves with unhurried grace. She lights a small charcoal fire, arranges the kettle above it, and measures the tea with practiced hands. The sound of the water heating blends with the whisper of the wind, a conversation so natural it needs no words. The traveler watches as the steam begins to rise, curling into the air like threads of silver. "Have you come far?" she asks. "Far enough to forget the distance," the traveler answers. "I think I've been walking longer than I planned." The woman nods, as though she understands without needing explanation. Kyoto does that. It bends time. You walk, and hours fold into moments, moments into stillness. Before long, you realize you've stopped counting. When the tea is ready, she pours it into 2 cups, one slightly cracked, the other whole. She offers the cracked one to the traveler. "It's more beautiful this way," she says, noticing their hesitation. Tea tastes best when it remembers the hands that have held it. The traveler accepts the cup carefully. The rim is smooth despite its age, the glaze thin and delicate. They take a sip. The flavor is earthy and deep, with a faint sweetness that lingers like a memory. The woman pours her own tea and sits opposite. "When I was younger," she says, "I used to think autumn was a kind of sadness, everything falling, fading, ending. But one year, a monk told me something I've never forgotten." She looks out toward the maple branches, her eyes soft with reflection. He said, "Autumn does not teach loss. It teaches release." The traveler listens. The rain has stopped entirely now, leaving the sound of water dripping from leaves. A beam of sunlight filters through the branches, catching in the steam from their cups. The air feels both warm and fragile. The woman continues, her words slow and steady, like someone pouring from a deep well. "When the leaves fall, they don't fight the wind. They don't cling to the branch. They've lived their color, and that is enough. To let go with grace, that is the lesson the season offers us, again and again." She sets her cup down, hands resting lightly upon the table. "Sometimes," she adds, "we come to places like this because something inside us is ready to fall away too." The traveler feels the truth of her words settle quietly inside. They think of the life left behind, the crowded trains, the endless tasks, the noise that fills every corner of the mind. How long had it been since they had simply sat like this, breathing without hurry? "I think," they say softly, "I've been holding on to too much." The woman smiles. Then let the rain take what it can. The rest will fall when it's ready. A silence unfolds between them, comfortable, expansive. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of listening. Outside, a single leaf detaches from its branch and drifts past the window, spinning slowly before vanishing from sight. The woman rises to tend to the kettle. The traveler closes their eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of tea spread through their chest. The faint sound of the bamboo fountain outside koi, koi, koi marks the passing of time so gently that it feels like no time at all. When the woman returns, she places a small plate before the traveler. 2 wagashi, tiny sweets shaped like maple leaves, colored with red bean and chestnut. These are called koyo no keis, she says. The wind of autumn leaves. They remind us that sweetness can exist even as things fall. The traveler smiles. The sweet melts on their tongue, delicate and soft, carrying a taste that feels both fleeting and eternal. As the afternoon deepens, shadows stretch gently across the room. The woman refills the traveler's cup one last time and gazes out the window. "Do you know," she says, "that the maple tree outside this tea house has been here for over 100 years? It was planted by a traveler, much like you. He said he wanted something to shade those who came after him, a kindness he would never see." The traveler looks at the tree. Its trunk is thick with moss, its branches wide and kind. Each leaf glows with a faint inner fire. "That's a beautiful thought," the traveler says. "Yes," the woman nods. "To give without remaining. To let go, and yet leave warmth behind." A faint wind rises, stirring the leaves outside. One by one, they begin to fall in earnest, hundreds of them, dancing through the air like slow rain. The traveler watches in silence, feeling the stillness of the moment deepen until it fills everything. In that silence, something inside loosens, a small knot of tension that had been there for years. It unravels not with pain, but with ease, like a thread returning to its natural shape. The woman senses it too. She smiles, her eyes gentle. "You see?" she says. "Even when nothing changes, something softens. That is how we begin again." The traveler nods, unable to speak. When it is time to leave, the woman walks them to the door. The forest outside shimmers with golden light, the path scattered with fallen leaves that seem to glow from within. The traveler bows deeply. "Thank you," they say. "For the tea. And for the words." The woman waves a hand softly. "Don't thank me," she says. "Thank the season. It does the teaching. I only pour the water." She looks toward the maple tree, her voice barely more than a whisper. Remember, to fall is not to fail. It is simply to return. The traveler steps outside. The air smells of rain and wood smoke and something faintly sweet. Behind them, the tea house fades into the forest, as though it were never separate from it at all. They walk back along the path, the leaves crunching softly beneath their feet. The world feels lighter, the colors sharper, the air more alive. Somewhere behind them, a single leaf breaks free, spinning gently through the air until it lands in the traveler's open palm. They smile, whispering to themselves, letting go can be beautiful. By the time the traveler reaches the edge of the forest, the mist has returned. The city lies beyond, rooftops gleaming, bells tolling faintly through the haze. The traveler pauses once more and looks back. The tea house is hidden now, but the maple tree's silhouette remains, standing tall against the soft gray sky. The traveler bows to it not out of ritual, but out of gratitude. Then, turning toward the path ahead, they continue walking. The rain begins again, light, patient, endless. And in its rhythm, the traveler feels a new kind of peace. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of release. Chapter 3: The Sound of Wooden Sandals. Morning returns wrapped in silver mist. The rain has stopped, but the world still drips softly from leaves, from temple roofs, from the memory of last night's sky. The traveler walks uphill along a narrow stone road that bends gently between houses. Each step brings them closer to Kiyomizu Temple, whose distant silhouette flickers in the fog like a memory half remembered. The air is cool and smells faintly of pine and river water. Somewhere, unseen, a stream murmurs beneath the stones, carrying with it fallen petals and forgotten dreams. The traveler breathes deeply, letting the sound fill the spaces where thoughts usually live. Kyoto is quieter in the early hours. The city still sleeps, and even the crows sound gentle as they call from the rooftops. The traveler's footsteps echo softly, 1, 2, 3 against the wet stone. Then, from somewhere ahead, another sound joins in. Clack, clack, clack. Wooden sandals, geta, striking the path in a rhythm, light and uneven, the sound of someone walking slowly, almost dancing. The traveler pauses. The sound continues, faint but distinct, approaching through the mist. Then, out of the pale fog, a figure appears, a child, perhaps 10 years old, dressed in a faded yukata patterned with maple leaves. Her hair is tied back with a red ribbon. She carries a small wooden bucket in one hand, the other tucked into her sleeve for warmth. When she notices the traveler, she stops and smiles. Her eyes are clear, like the surface of a still pond. "Good morning," the traveler says gently. The girl bows, her geta clicking once on the stone. "Good morning," she echoes. "You're heading to the temple, aren't you?" The traveler nods. She tilts her head, listening to the faint dripping from the eaves above. "It's quiet today," she says. The rain washed the city clean. Everything sounds softer after rain. The traveler smiles. Yes. Even footsteps sound different. The girl looks down at her sandals. "My grandfather made these for me," she says proudly. "He said every sound they make is a reminder that I'm still here." They begin walking together. The path climbs gently, lined with moss-covered walls. The girl hums a tune slow and wordless, something between a song and a sigh. The traveler listens. It feels both new and ancient at once. "Is that a song from the temple?" they ask. The girl shakes her head. "No, it's from my dreams. I hear it whenever it rains." She skips ahead, her sandals tapping the stones in that same light rhythm: clack, clack, clack. The traveler follows their own steps more slowly, more deliberately. Together, their sounds weave into a quiet duet, echoing faintly through the mist. When they reach a bend in the road, the girl stops and points. Beyond the veil of fog, the red gates of Kiyomizu Temple rise half-shrouded, half-revealed. The great veranda stretches out above the valley, suspended in the air. The traveler exhales softly. Even through mist, the temple radiates a stillness older than time itself. They climb the final steps. The air grows cooler, the sound of the city below fading until only the wind and dripping water remain. The girl runs ahead, bucket swinging, and kneels beside a small stone basin near the entrance. She fills it with rainwater, then dips her hands into it, washing them carefully. "My grandmother said the water here remembers every prayer," she says. The traveler kneels beside her. "And what did you pray for?" The girl smiles, looking up at the gray sky. "For people to rest. Everyone always looks so tired when they climb this hill." The traveler laughs softly. "That's a kind wish." The girl stands and hands the traveler a small ladle. "You should wash too," she says. "Not just your hands but the noise inside you." The traveler hesitates, then pours water over their palms. The coolness flows down their wrists, over their fingers, and into the ground. For a moment, they feel something uncoil within a tension they hadn't realized they carried. When they look up again, the girl has stepped ahead, toward the main hall. The veranda of Kiyomizu stretches wide over the valley. Below, the forest glows with mist, the colors of autumn softened to watercolor. The traveler walks slowly to the edge, resting their hands upon the wooden railing. The wind moves through the trees like breath. A bell sounds from somewhere deep within the temple, a low, resonant tone that rolls through the air and disappears into the clouds. The traveler closes their eyes. The sound feels alive, not merely heard, but felt in the chest, in the space between heartbeats. When they open their eyes again, the girl is standing nearby, holding out her bucket. "It's full now," she says. "The roof water is clean today. Would you like to see?" The traveler peers inside. The water ripples, reflecting fragments of the misty sky. And there for just a moment they see two reflections, theirs and hers. Then the surface trembles, and the image dissolves. The girl laughs. The water never holds still for long. That's its secret. A group of monks appears, walking slowly along the veranda, their sandals whispering against the wood. They pass without speaking, each carrying a broom or a small cloth. One pauses to bow toward the forest before continuing. Their quiet movements feel like part of the rain itself, the continuation of a calm that began long before dawn. The traveler and the girl watch in silence. Then, after a while, the girl says softly, "Sometimes I think the sound of sandals is the temple's heartbeat. If no one walks here, maybe the temple would forget how to breathe." The traveler looks at her. "And you keep it breathing?" She nods solemnly. "I try. That's why I come every morning, even in the rain." They wander through the corridors, where votive candles flicker in small alcoves. The air smells faintly of cedar smoke and rain-soaked incense. Each flame bends slightly with the passing wind. The traveler trails their fingers lightly along the wooden walls, feeling the cool texture of centuries. "Does it ever get lonely here?" they ask. The girl tilts her head. "Lonely? No. Even when no one's here, the temple isn't empty. You can hear it, the walls creak, the floor sighs, the wind prays through the gaps. Everything talks if you listen long enough." Her words hang in the air, simple and true. After a while, they return to the open veranda. The mist is beginning to thin, revealing the valley below. Patches of gold and crimson shine through where sunlight touches the leaves. The traveler leans against the railing once more. The girl sets her bucket down beside her feet. "Do you have a home far away?" she asks suddenly. The traveler nods slowly. "Yes. But lately, I've been walking more than staying." The girl nods as if she understands. "My grandfather said travelers are like rivers, always moving, but always carrying something of where they've been." The traveler smiles. "And where do you think rivers go?" The girl thinks for a moment. "Back to the sky, maybe. That's where the rain comes from, after all. The bell sounds again, deeper this time, longer. The vibration rolls through the wood beneath their feet. For a few breaths, it seems as though everything, the temple, the forest, even the mist, is breathing in rhythm with that sound. Then, as quietly as it began, the ringing fades. The air feels lighter, clearer. The traveler turns to say something to the girl, but she is gone. Only the sound of wooden sandals remains, echoing faintly down the steps. Clack, clack, clack. The traveler hurries to the railing and looks down, but the path below is empty. The mist curls where she should be, swirling like smoke before dissolving into the air. A chill runs gently down the traveler's spine, not of fear, but of awe. The wind brushes their face, carrying with it a faint echo, the girl's laughter, distant and bright. The traveler lingers a while longer on the veranda. The forest below sways gently. A few late raindrops fall from the roof, catching sunlight as they fall, beads of glass returning to earth. Then, slowly, the traveler descends the steps. The world seems softer now, less solid. Each sound, a bird's call, the rustle of robes, the tap of their own shoes, feels alive, connected. At the foot of the stairs, near the cleansing basin, the traveler notices something resting on the stone ledge, a single wooden sandal, child-sized, still wet from the rain. Inside the sandal lies a maple leaf, bright red against the pale wood. The traveler bends down, lifts the leaf carefully, and smiles. A gift from the mist, perhaps, or a reminder that not every companion walks beside us for long. They place the leaf gently into their pocket and whisper, "Thank you for walking with me." As the traveler leaves the temple grounds, the mist finally clears. The city stretches below, rooftops gleaming, bells echoing faintly across the valley. The path ahead glistens with moisture, glowing as if the stones themselves remember the sound of sandals long vanished. The traveler walks slowly, each step light and measured. The faint echo follows, not outside, but within. Clack, 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 like a heartbeat steadying itself after rain. And for the first time in a long while, the traveler feels that every sound, every echo, every silence belongs. The world is not empty. It is simply listening. Chapter 4: The Calligraphy of Water. The rain has returned, not heavy, but steady, a fine mist falling like threads of silk from a gray sky. Kyoto breathes in rhythm with it. Roof tiles glisten. The air smells faintly of ink, moss, and morning. The traveler walks without hurry, following a narrow stream that winds through the back streets near Higashiyama. Small bridges cross it, their stones worn smooth by centuries of quiet footsteps. Fallen leaves float slowly downstream, spinning like forgotten thoughts. Ahead, through the rain's thin curtain, a temple wall appears plain, unpainted, its plaster cracked gently by time. A wooden gate stands half open, creaking softly whenever the wind passes. From inside comes a faint, rhythmic sound, shish, shish, like a brush moving across paper. Curious, the traveler steps through the gate. The courtyard within is simple. A small maple tree leans toward a stone basin, its leaves red as embers against the gray world. Rainwater pools in shallow dishes along the edges of the path. In the center stands a man dressed in white robes, his head shaved, his hands steady. He kneels before a large slab of stone laid flat upon the ground. In his hand is a calligraphy brush, long-handled, its bristles darkened with water. He moves it slowly, deliberately, drawing invisible shapes across the stone's surface. Each stroke darkens the stone briefly, then fades as the water sinks in. Within moments, nothing remains. The traveler watches in silence, mesmerized by the rhythm. The man does not look up, yet seems aware of the visitor's presence. Finally, after completing another invisible character, he rinses the brush in a small bowl and says, without turning, "You've come seeking silence, haven't you?" The traveler hesitates, then nods. "Yes. Though I didn't know that until now." The man smiles faintly. "Most who find their way here come for that reason. Sit, if you like. The rain will not mind." The traveler sits beneath the maple tree. Drops fall from its branches, tapping softly against the stone. "What are you writing?" they ask. "Not writing," the monk replies, dipping his brush again. "Listening." He draws another stroke, the movement slow and graceful. "Each word I paint with water has no desire to remain. It appears, it breathes, and it vanishes. That is enough." The traveler tilts their head. "But if it disappears, how can anyone read it?" The monk chuckles. "Reading is not the purpose. Feeling is." He gestures toward the wet stone. "Ink captures thought. Water captures presence. It teaches us to speak without needing to be remembered. For a while, there is only sound, rain upon stone, breath upon air, brush upon silence." The traveler closes their eyes and listens. The rhythm becomes hypnotic, shish shish shish, like the sound of waves receding, like the whisper of leaves turning in autumn wind. When the traveler opens their eyes again, they notice faint traces where the water has begun to dry, ghostly outlines of words too fleeting to understand. "What do they mean?" the traveler asks softly. The monk studies the fading marks. They mean nothing, he says, and everything. Meaning lives only for the moment we see it. After that, it belongs to the world. He looks up at the traveler, eyes gentle and bright. Would you like to try? The traveler hesitates, then accepts the brush. It feels lighter than expected, almost weightless, yet alive with purpose. Breathe, the monk says. Do not think of words. Let the brush move with the rain. The traveler kneels, dips the brush into the bowl, and draws across the stone. The bristles glide easily, leaving a shimmering trail that darkens, shines, then fades. The first attempt feels awkward, but as the strokes continue, something inside begins to soften. The movement becomes natural, the wrist loosens, the breath slows, the mind quiets. The monk watches silently, then murmurs, "Good. You're writing what you cannot say." The traveler smiles faintly. But it's disappearing. The monk nods. Of course. That's how you know it's real. The rain falls harder for a moment, blurring the courtyard into watercolor. The traveler sets the brush down and simply watches the ripples, the reflections, the impermanence of everything. It feels peaceful, they say. But also sad. The monk dips his head. Peace and sadness share the same gate. One enters through letting go, the other through holding on. He stands, stretching his back. When I was young, I wanted my calligraphy to last forever. I used the finest ink, the strongest paper. But the more I tried to preserve my words, the less alive they felt. He looks toward the rain. So I began to write with water instead. Now each word lives only for a breath, and in that breath, it is perfect. A breeze stirs the maple leaves. One detaches and lands upon the stone, where it rests for a moment before sliding into the water bowl. The monk smiles. See? Even the leaf understands impermanence better than we do. He kneels again and writes another word, 3 swift strokes, then a pause. What does that one say? The traveler asks. The monk looks down. It means ma, the space between things, the silence that lets all else be heard. The traveler repeats the word quietly. Ma. The sound lingers on their tongue like a note fading into the air. The monk nods. Every life, every moment, every breath is made of that space. Without it, there would be no room for peace. A small bell chimes somewhere within the temple. The rain lightens, and the air brightens with silver. The stone courtyard glows faintly, each droplet shining before it disappears. The monk turns toward the traveler. Would you like some tea? Inside the small study, a kettle steams gently over coals. The room smells of tatami and damp cedar. Scrolls line the walls, some blank, others bearing faint gray marks, perhaps old calligraphy once painted with water and sealed by time. As the monk pours the tea, he says, "Water teaches us not to cling. It carries everything, leaves, light, memory, and yet holds nothing." The traveler sips. The tea tastes earthy and soft, like rain distilled into warmth. "Then perhaps I am learning to be water," they say. The monk smiles. "Perhaps. Or perhaps water is learning to be you." Outside, the rain slows to a whisper. The traveler stands by the doorway, watching droplets slide down the eaves. On the stone slab, the last traces of their writing fade. Within moments, there is only smooth, wet stone, silent, ready. The traveler feels a deep stillness settle inside, like the pause between two breaths. "Thank you," they say, "for teaching me how to disappear." The monk shakes his head gently. "Not disappear. Return. Every drop that vanishes becomes part of the next cloud, the next rain. Nothing is ever lost, only transformed." The traveler bows. "Then I will carry that with me." "Do not carry it," the monk says with a smile. "Let it carry you." As the traveler steps back into the street, the rain begins again, light, playful, endless. The stone path shines beneath their feet. In a puddle by the gate, they see a reflection not of themselves, but of water in motion. The brush, the words, the rain, all one. The traveler walks on, the sound of drops accompanying each step, the rhythm of impermanence echoing softly in the heart. And somewhere behind them, in the quiet courtyard, the monk continues his writing, each stroke vanishing as soon as it is born, each silence lasting forever. Chapter 5: The Garden of Still Time. The rain had faded by morning, leaving the world wrapped in silver mist. Kyoto glowed faintly beneath a sky the color of pearl. Each rooftop shimmered with dew, each pine needle carried a drop of light. The traveler walked quietly through narrow streets, guided not by map or plan, but by a faint sense of listening, as if the city itself whispered where to go next. The path led north, through calm neighborhoods where the hum of modern life softened into silence. Finally, at the foot of low hills, a temple appeared, old, unadorned, its gate simple yet dignified. A wooden sign read Ryo-en-ji, the Temple of Peaceful Dragon. The traveler had heard of this place, the stone garden, famous and still, where time seemed to stop. They entered slowly, removing their shoes, feeling the cool wood beneath their feet. Inside, the sound of the world grew distant, replaced by something else: the quiet pulse of air, the faint hiss of the wind brushing over stones. The veranda opened to the garden. 15 stones lay within a field of white gravel, each placed carefully, impossibly balanced in both form and emptiness. No trees, no flowers, only rock and sand. Yet the sight held more life than any forest. The traveler sat down, folding their legs beneath them. The gravel rippled in delicate patterns, traces of a monk's rake drawing slow waves around each stone. The patterns shimmered with moisture droplets from last night's rain clung to the edges like pearls. The garden did not move, yet it seemed to breathe. For a long while, the traveler said nothing. They simply watched the stones, the spaces between them, the way silence itself seemed to have weight. The air was so still that even the faint drip of water from the eaves sounded like thunder. A monk appeared quietly from behind a pillar, broom in hand. He bowed, then began sweeping the veranda, his movements slow and circular. After a few moments, he said softly, "The stones do not change, but we do." That is how the garden teaches. The traveler turned toward him. "It feels as if everything has stopped," they said. The monk smiled gently. "Stopped? Or simply slowed enough for you to see?" He gestured toward the raked sand. "Each line you see was drawn at dawn. The moment it was finished, it began to fade. The wind erases, the rain remakes. Every morning, the same act and yet, never the same garden." The traveler nodded. "So even stillness changes." "Exactly," the monk replied. "Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of peace." A bird landed on the veranda railing, a small sparrow, feathers puffed from the cold. It chirped once, tilted its head, then hopped lightly onto the sand. Its tiny feet left prints between the raked lines. The monk watched it with amusement. "There," he said, "the garden has been rewritten." The traveler smiled. "And you'll have to rake it again?" The monk shook his head. "No, I'll leave it until tomorrow." The sparrow, too, is part of the design. He leaned on his broom. "To seek perfection is to fight the world. To accept imperfection is to rest within it." The traveler's gaze drifted back to the stones. In their silence, something ancient seemed to hum, not a sound, but a resonance felt deep within the ribs. Time blurred. Minutes, or perhaps hours, slipped away unnoticed. The traveler did not move, barely breathed. The gravel shimmered. The air trembled faintly. Then, as if from far away, came the memory of water. The rhythm of rain returned in the mind, echoing faintly against the stones. Each droplet that had fallen last night seemed to have left its spirit behind, a whisper of motion within stillness. The traveler's thoughts slowed until only sensations remained: the warmth of the wood beneath them, the cool air on their hands, the scent of rain on stone. In that quiet, the world expanded. The sound of the wind became endless. The breath between heartbeats felt like eternity. For the first time, the traveler understood what the monk had meant, that stillness was not the opposite of movement. It was its source. The monk returned, carrying a small cup of tea. "Drink," he said softly. "The warmth will help you see." The traveler accepted it. The steam rose in thin spirals, vanishing into the air. The tea tasted of roasted barley and calm, earthy, grounding, alive. After a moment, the traveler asked, "When you rake the garden each morning, what do you think about?" The monk looked out toward the stones. "I think of nothing," he said simply. "At first, that was difficult. But then I learned the garden does not need my thoughts. It only needs my presence." He crouched, drawing a line in the air with his finger. "Each pattern I make lasts only until the next wind. I used to wish the lines would stay. Now I wish only that they were true while they lasted." The traveler looked down at the sand again. "And are they?" The monk smiled. "As true as a single breath. And that is enough." A faint bell rang from somewhere within the temple. The monk straightened, placing his hands together. "It is time for meditation," he said. "Would you like to join?" The traveler nodded. They followed him inside, to a small hall lined with tatami mats. The air smelled of incense, faint sandalwood, gentle and lingering. Monks sat in a row, facing the wall, their robes the color of earth. The traveler knelt at the end of the row. The bell rang again once, long and deep. Silence followed. Not the silence of emptiness, but of presence, a silence so full it felt alive. Breathe in. Breathe out. Rain once more, falling inside memory. The traveler's thoughts drifted like clouds. Faces appeared: the girl with wooden sandals, the calligrapher of water, the innkeeper's gentle smile. Each dissolved as gently as it had come. Then even those images vanished. Only the sound of air remained. Minutes passed. Or maybe centuries. When the bell rang again, it felt like the first sound in the universe. The traveler bowed with the others, eyes damp, though whether from the incense or something deeper, they could not tell. Outside, the rain had returned. Not loud, a quiet mist, fine and endless. The garden shimmered under it, the raked lines blurring, merging back into smoothness. The monk stood beside the traveler, watching. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "I will draw it again. The same shapes, the same stones. And yet, the garden will never be the same." The traveler nodded slowly. "Because you will not be the same." The monk smiled. And neither will you." The traveler lingered a moment longer on the veranda. The sparrow had gone. Only the stones remained silent, eternal, unhurried. They closed their eyes. The air was cool on their skin. Time itself seemed to pause, not as an absence, but as a presence vast and kind. When they opened their eyes again, the garden looked different, though nothing had changed. The stones were still stones. The sand was still sand. But now, the traveler could see the spaces between the invisible currents that connected everything. The stillness was no longer empty. It was full of quiet life. As they turned to leave, the monk said softly, "When you walk, walk slowly enough for your shadow to follow. When you breathe, breathe deeply enough for the world to join." The traveler bowed deeply. "Thank you." The monk returned the gesture. "There is no need for thanks. You were already here before you arrived." Outside the gate, the world waited, wet streets, swaying branches, the soft return of city sounds. But something within the traveler had shifted. The rush of time no longer pressed. The air no longer hurried. Every sound, every drop of rain, every footstep now carried the same rhythm, the rhythm of still time. And so, they walked on, the world breathing gently around them, the stones of Rio and G resting behind, and within their heart, the quiet garden remained endless, unchanging, alive. Chapter 6: The Bridge of Forgotten Names, Part 1. The rain had passed, leaving the air washed clean and cool. Kyoto's rivers shimmered under the pale afternoon light, their surfaces rippling with the breath of the wind. The traveler followed a narrow path along the bank of the Katsura River, where willow branches trailed down like green curtains brushing the water's edge. The world was quiet after the rain. Only the soft shish of current and the distant croak of frogs filled the air. The traveler's sandals pressed into the damp earth, releasing the faint scent of moss and soil. They had walked far that morning, from temple courtyards, through bamboo groves, through streets still glistening from the downpour. And now, drawn by the river's calm murmur, they found themselves at a weathered wooden bridge. It arched gently across the water, simple yet graceful, its surface dark with rain. A single figure stood at its center, an old man in a straw hat, holding a wooden pole beside a moored boat. The traveler paused at the foot of the bridge. The old man turned, his movements unhurried, as though shaped by the rhythm of the river itself. His face was lined, but his eyes were clear, reflecting the same calm gray as the sky above. "You walk as though the river were calling you," the old man said, his voice deep but gentle. "Perhaps it was," the traveler replied. "It sounded peaceful. The old man nodded slowly. Peaceful, yes, but not silent. Listen closely. The traveler closed their eyes. Beneath the steady flow, they began to hear layers, the pluck of small waves against stones, the faint hum of insects in the reeds. Even the low creak of the bridge's beams shifting under weight. It speaks, the old man said. But not in words. The river remembers what we forget. The traveler looked at him. And what does it remember? He smiled faintly. Names. Faces. Voices that once laughed here. Every drop carries someone's story, but it does not keep them. It lets them drift away. He gestured toward the boat. Would you like to cross with me? It's slower than walking, but sometimes the slowest way shows the most. The traveler nodded. Together, they stepped into the narrow wooden vessel. The old man pushed gently from the bank, and the current began to move them forward. The river whispered beneath them. The traveler watched as the bridge slipped away, its reflection trembling on the surface. For a while, neither spoke. The only sounds were the dipping of the pole and the sigh of water around the hull. The old man broke the silence. People come here to let go of things they can no longer carry. Some whisper their regrets into the river. Others drop a folded paper with a name on it. By morning, the water has taken it all away. The traveler looked at him, intrigued. Do you remember their names? The old man chuckled. I did once. But memory is heavy, you see. If I kept every name, my boat would sink. The river widened, and the current grew slower, almost lazy. On the far bank, reeds swayed like soft brushes painting the horizon. A heron lifted into the air, its wings cutting silently through the mist. The old man pointed toward the water's surface. Do you see how the river carries the sky? Clouds drift on it, just like thoughts. If you watch long enough, even sorrow becomes beautiful. The traveler followed his gaze. The reflection of the bridge rippled, broke, and reformed. For a moment, it looked as if the bridge existed only in the water, fragile, dreamlike, more real in reflection than in wood. The traveler whispered, "It feels like the river is erasing even my thoughts." The old man smiled. Then you are beginning to listen properly. He guided the boat toward the shadow of an overhanging willow. There, hanging from one branch, the traveler noticed something, dozens of thin paper strips tied with thread, fluttering gently in the wind. Each one bore a faint trace of ink, though the rain had blurred most of the writing. What are those? The traveler asked. Names, the old man replied softly. Written by those who wished to be remembered or forgotten. He leaned closer, studying one strip as it swayed. When it rains, the ink runs and the paper tears. The river takes the pieces away. No one knows where they go, and no one asks. The traveler looked up at the dangling papers, moving with the rhythm of the air. So even remembrance dissolves here. The old man dipped his pole again, pushing the boat slightly downstream. Everything dissolves, traveler. But that doesn't mean it's lost. When the ink fades, the wish returns to the sky. When a name disappears, the silence remembers it. The boat drifted gently beneath the willow's shade. The world grew quieter still. The traveler could hear their own breath mingling with the sound of the current. In that hush, they felt the weight of their own memories' faces, voices, letters never sent, promises never kept. All of them carried unseen within the river of their mind. The old man looked up at the clouds. "You've lost someone, haven't you?" The traveler hesitated. "Yes. Long ago." He nodded knowingly. "We all have. The river knows that, too." He reached into the folds of his robe and pulled out a small piece of paper, folded twice. "Write their name," he said gently, "and give it to the water." The traveler stared at the blank paper. The surface trembled slightly in their hands, the fibers still damp from the mist. "Will it reach them?" they asked quietly. The old man smiled, dipping his pole once more. "The river doesn't deliver messages. It carries peace. That is enough." Chapter 6: The Bridge of Forgotten Names, Part 2. The traveler stared at the blank paper for a long while. The river shimmered beneath the boat, its movement slow and endless. Clouds drifted above, their shapes shifting like unspoken memories. At last, they dipped the brush into the bowl of river water and wrote a single name, not with ink, but with that same dissolving grace the monk had once shown with his calligraphy of water. The letters glistened faintly, already fading before they could be read. They set the paper gently upon the surface. It floated for a breath, trembling like a living thing, before the current caught it. Slowly, silently, it began to drift away. The traveler watched until the paper was gone, until it was no longer possible to tell where it had been. Something in their chest loosened, as though a knot that had long been held in silence had quietly undone itself. The old man nodded once, not speaking. For a time, they drifted without words. The boat moved through bands of sunlight and shadow, each ripple breaking into silver. At the edge of the water, a small shrine came into view, little more than a stone figure half covered in moss. A tiny wooden plaque hung nearby, its writing erased by rain and time. The old man guided the boat toward it. "That is where I end my journeys," he said softly. "Every evening, I stop here and thank the river." The traveler smiled faintly. "For what?" for remembering what I cannot." He rested the pole across his knees and looked toward the horizon. "I once wrote names, too many of them. They belonged to the people who used to live in the village beyond those hills. When the floods came years ago, the river took their houses, their voices, everything. For a long time, I tried to remember each one." He paused, his gaze distant, his tone like wind moving through reeds. But the list kept growing shorter. Memory, I realized, is not a river. It is a shore. And the river must take what it needs. The traveler listened, the silence between words as heavy and tender as the rain had been that morning. "I thought forgetting was cruel," the traveler said after a while. "But maybe it's not." The old man's eyes softened. "Forgetting is not the end of love. It is its gentlest form. We forget so that what we loved may rest." He looked down at the water, where faint circles rippled outward from the side of the boat. "To forget is not to lose, it is to return what was never ours to keep." The traveler breathed deeply, letting those words settle inside them like pebbles sinking into still water. The light began to fade. The river's surface darkened to the color of ink. The bridge behind them was now only a faint outline in the mist, like something belonging to a dream. "Do you ever cross that bridge yourself?" the traveler asked. The old man smiled, his expression unreadable. "Every night, in my sleep. Every morning, I wake again on this side. Perhaps one day, I will not." He dipped his hand into the water and lifted a few drops, letting them fall back through his fingers. "When that day comes, the river will remember my name for a while. Then, it too will fade. That is enough." The boat reached the far bank. The traveler stepped out, feeling the cool mud beneath their feet. The air smelled of wet grass and cedar. The old man remained in the boat, steadying it with one hand on the pole. "Thank you," the traveler said softly, "for bringing me here." The old man shook his head. "I did not bring you. The river did. I only kept it company." He pushed off gently, and the boat began to drift backward into the current. The traveler watched as it grew smaller, the old man's figure merging with the grayness of the evening. Soon, only the faint ripple of water remained. The traveler turned toward the path that led up the hill. As they walked, they felt lighter as though each step left something unneeded behind. At the top, they looked back one last time. The bridge shimmered faintly through the mist, half shadow, half light. In the distance, the sound of the river continued steady, eternal, like a voice speaking softly in its sleep. And then, for a fleeting moment, the traveler thought they saw the old man standing once more at the bridge's center, looking up at the same sky. But perhaps it was only a trick of reflection, one memory merging with another before both dissolved. By the time the traveler reached the small inn near the river's bend, night had fully settled. The owner welcomed them with quiet warmth, showing them to a tatami room overlooking the water. The traveler sat by the open window, listening to the steady flow outside. Somewhere below, a lantern's light trembled on the surface, a fragment of fire carried by the dark. They closed their eyes. In the rhythm of the river, they could still hear the old man's voice, soft and slow. Forgetting is not losing. It is giving back what the heart once borrowed. The words lingered, fading with the night. Outside, the river continued to whisper, carrying nameless prayers downstream, the kind that do not need to be spoken, or remembered, to be true. And as the traveler drifted into sleep, the bridge of forgotten names stood quietly beneath the stars, its reflection unbroken, its silence whole. Chapter 7: The House Where Time Sleeps, Part 1. The path grew narrower as the traveler left the riverside behind. Evening light filtered through the trees, turning the air to gold and dust. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell marked the hour, though the sound seemed too faint, too slow, as if time itself were stretching. Beyond the last cluster of houses, an old wooden gate appeared at the end of a winding lane. Its sign, barely legible beneath layers of weather and lichen, read "The House Where Time Sleeps." The traveler paused. The words seemed both strange and familiar, as though they had been waiting to be read aloud. Pushing the gate open, they entered a small courtyard. Fallen leaves covered the ground in a soft amber carpet. The air smelled faintly of camellia and old wood. Every sound, even the wind, felt muffled, as if wrapped in silk. At the center of the courtyard stood a two-story townhouse, its paper screens yellowed with age. Through the half-open door came the faint ticking of a clock. Tick, pause, tick. The rhythm was uneven, almost hesitant, like the heartbeat of something half asleep. Inside, the light was dim and golden, the kind that seems to remember itself. Dust floated through it, moving slowly, as though caught in syrup. Along one wall stood dozens of clocks, tall grandfather clocks, small pocket watches, cuckoos with silent mouths. Each ticked at its own pace, some fast, some slow, some almost inaudible. The traveler stepped softly, careful not to disturb them. "Be gentle," said a voice from the shadows. "They are dreaming." From behind a low table, an old woman emerged. Her hair was silver, bound loosely in a braid. Her robe was simple cotton, but her movements had the precision of someone who had spent her life listening to time. "Welcome," she said, bowing slightly. "Few people find this house anymore." The traveler bowed in return. "I didn't mean to intrude." The sign caught my eye. The old woman smiled faintly. "Then perhaps it was meant for you. Come, sit. The clocks won't mind." The traveler knelt by the low table. A pot of tea steamed gently between them, the fragrance soft and earthy. "Do all these clocks still work?" the traveler asked. The old woman shook her head. "Some. Others have fallen asleep." "Can clocks sleep?" "Everything that remembers can," she replied. "They tire of keeping count. Here, I let them rest." She lifted one small clock from the shelf, its glass cracked. Its hand stopped at exactly midnight. This one belonged to a family who lived nearby. It stopped on the night their son left for the war. They brought it here when he didn't return. She set it down carefully. "Sometimes I think time stopped that night for them, too." The traveler ran their fingers along the table's edge. "So you keep time for those who can't?" The old woman chuckled softly. "No, I simply give it a place to sleep." The tea was warm, and the air still. The ticking of the clocks blended into a lullaby of faint, irregular rhythms. The traveler felt their heartbeat slow to match it. "Do you ever wind them again?" they asked. The old woman looked thoughtful. "Only when they dream of waking. Sometimes at night, one begins to tick on its own. Just for a while. Then it rests again." She poured more tea, her hands steady. "People think time moves forward, always. But here, it circles. It folds. It breathes in and out like a sleeper." Her words hung in the air, soft and sure. "Perhaps," she continued, "that is why we age, not because time passes, but because it pauses. Every still moment leaves a trace inside us, like a ripple that never fully fades." From the far corner came a faint chime. A small golden clock, its face tarnished, struck once a single clear note that shimmered and disappeared. The old woman listened. "Ah," she said quietly. "That one is remembering something." "What does it remember?" "A child's laughter," she said. "A spring afternoon. I don't know whose, but it returns now and then, like a bird visiting its old nest." The traveler smiled faintly. "That's beautiful." The old woman tilted her head. "You carry a quiet ticking, too, traveler." "I can hear it." The traveler blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "Every heart keeps its own time. Some beat with longing, some with regret. Yours sounds like someone waiting for tomorrow to arrive, though it already has." The traveler didn't know what to say. The air between them deepened, rich and still. The old woman rose and walked to the shelves. From a high corner, she brought down a small wooden box. Inside lay a pocket watch, its case worn smooth by years of touch. "This one has never been wound," she said. "It was made for a man who wanted to capture a perfect moment before it began to fade." But he realized too late that winding it would make it move, and movement means loss. She placed it in the traveler's hand. It was cool and weightless. "Listen," she whispered. The traveler held it close to their ear. There was no sound. And yet, in the silence, something pulsed, not a tick, but the faintest echo of breath, as if the watch were exhaling time it no longer needed. The traveler looked up. "It's not broken." "No," she said. "It's sleeping. Like the rest of us." Outside, the wind had stopped. The world beyond the paper screens seemed to have paused entirely. Even the dust in the air moved more slowly, reluctant to fall. The old woman smiled gently. "You should rest here tonight. The clock's like new dreams." The traveler hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." As the old woman prepared a futon in the next room, the traveler sat surrounded by ticking, soft, uneven, comforting. One by one, the clocks seemed to slow, as though joining the traveler's breath. The line between waking and dreaming began to blur. And as the traveler's eyes closed, they thought they heard the old woman's voice, distant and warm. "Sleep gently. Time will wait for you here." Chapter 7: The House Where Time Sleeps, Part 2. Night settled gently over the old townhouse, as though the sky itself had come to rest upon its roof. The traveler lay upon the futon the old woman had prepared. The air was warm and still, scented faintly of cedar and the tea they had shared. All around, the clocks ticked softly, a constellation of sound in the darkness. Some quick and bright, some slow as a sigh. Together they formed a rhythm too complex to follow, yet somehow perfectly balanced, like rain falling on leaves far away. The traveler listened until the ticking seemed to dissolve into breath. One by one, the sounds folded into silence. And then, somewhere between waking and sleep, the traveler opened their eyes to find that the room had changed. The walls glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Dust motes drifted like golden snow. The clocks still stood in their places, but their hands were no longer moving. Instead, they floated suspended in mid-air, pointing in every direction, their glass faces catching invisible light. The traveler sat up, though they felt no weight, no gravity, only stillness. A voice came from the far side of the room, gentle as before. "You are inside the pause," the old woman said. But when the traveler turned, she was no longer quite herself. Her outline shimmered, as though drawn in ink that refused to dry. "What is this place?" the traveler asked. "The place between seconds," she replied. "Where time exhales." The traveler stood. The tatami underfoot rippled softly, like water catching moonlight. Through the open shoji screens, they could see the courtyard. But the leaves no longer moved, and the air hung motionless, each droplet of mist caught mid-fall. It was as if the world had taken a single breath, and decided not to release it. The old woman stepped closer. Her eyes were clear, and within them swirled faint reflections, children running, bells ringing, seasons turning. A lifetime contained in each glance. "You see," she said, "time never truly passes. It only sleeps, so that we may dream of it moving." They walked together to the wall of clocks. Each one seemed alive, even in its stillness. The old woman reached out and touched the nearest clock's face. At her touch, the glass turned to water. Inside it, the traveler saw themselves walking beside the river, kneeling in the courtyard of the monk, watching the paper with a name drift away. "These are your hours," she whispered. "They rest here when you do." The traveler stared, their reflection rippling across dozens of sleeping clocks. "So every moment I've lived is still here?" She nodded. "Yes. But they wait for you to let them go. Only then can they become silent." They stood before a large grandfather clock, its face as tall as the traveler's shoulders. The pendulum hung still, yet shimmered faintly, as if remembering motion. The old woman placed the traveler's hand upon it. "Close your eyes," she said. When they did, they felt something pulse beneath their fingers, not a beat, but a warmth, like the echo of their own heartbeat returning from far away. "You can release it," she murmured. "Time does not need to be kept. It only needs to be felt." The traveler exhaled, and as they did, the pendulum began to move once, then again, then slower, until the sound of ticking became the sound of breathing, and the sound of breathing became the sound of wind. When the traveler opened their eyes, the room had returned to its ordinary form. The clocks were still again, their hands resting at midnight. The old woman poured tea as if nothing had changed. She looked younger now, or perhaps merely lighter, as though part of her had stepped quietly into another hour. "Did I dream?" the traveler asked. She smiled. "All dreams are true for as long as they last. And time," she added, "is only another kind of dream." She handed them the cup. The tea was cool, but carried a faint sweetness like rain remembered by sunlight. Morning had begun to touch the paper screens with the palest gray. The travelers stood, feeling rested in a way they had never known. The old woman bowed. "Go while the day is still soft," she said. The clocks will keep sleeping. Will I ever find this house again? The traveler asked. She smiled. Perhaps you already have. Every time you close your eyes, you pass its gate. Outside, the courtyard waited quietly. The leaves glistened with dew. From somewhere deep within the city, a temple bell sounded not loud, not urgent, but infinitely patient. The traveler turned once more to look at the old house. The door was closed now, and for a moment, they thought they saw a faint shimmer as if countless unseen clockshots smiled in their sleep. Then the light shifted, and it was gone. The traveler walked back toward the path, each step light as breath. The morning air smelled of rain and beginnings. Behind them, the house where time slept returned to its silence, not empty, but full of resting hours. Chapter 8 Voices Beneath the Rain Part 1. The rain returned before dawn. It came softly at first, a whisper on the roof tiles. A faint tremor in the air then deepened into a rhythm both familiar and endless. The traveler awoke to its sound. For a moment, they did not know where they were. The walls of the inn were washed in silver light, and outside, the garden blurred into a moving haze. The rain was not cold. It had that gentle warmth Kyoto's autumn rain sometimes carries, the kind that feels less like falling water and more like memory returning to the earth. The traveler rose, slid the shoji open, and watched the droplets gather on the veranda's edge, falling one by one into the waiting moss. Each sound, tiny, precise, seemed to echo inside the traveler's chest, as if the rain were speaking directly to the heart. They stepped outside with an umbrella borrowed from the innkeeper. The street was empty, its stones darkened to a deep, calm sheen. The smell of wet cedar and charcoal smoke drifted through the air. From somewhere far away came the slow toll of a temple bell. Each note lingered like a thought unwilling to fade. The traveler began to walk, without direction, without hurry. The rain guided them, down one street, across another, past a row of shuttered shops and sleeping cats curled in doorways. Every corner looked familiar, as though they had walked these streets before, in another dream, another life. As they passed the gate of an old temple, a voice rose faintly through the rain. Each word I paint with water has no desire to remain. The traveler stopped. Through the veil of rain, they could almost see the monk from the temple courtyard. Kneeling again before the slab of stone, his brush moving slowly, the strokes appearing and vanishing in rhythm with the falling rain. The traveler listened. The voice was not truly there, and yet it filled the air as clearly as the sound of the rain itself. It appears, it breathes, and it vanishes. That is enough. The traveler closed their eyes. For a moment, they felt the brush in their own hand again, the water darkening the stone, the silence expanding inside their chest. When they opened their eyes, the temple gate stood empty. Only the rain remained, writing its invisible calligraphy upon the stones. They continued walking. The road curved toward the river. The bridge came into view, its wood dark and smooth with moisture, its reflection trembling softly on the surface below. The traveler paused at its center. The water moved gently beneath them, carrying fallen leaves downstream. From somewhere beyond the mist, another voice reached them, deep, weathered, kind. The river remembers what we forget. The traveler smiled faintly. They could almost see the old man again, standing in his boat, pole resting across his knees, eyes bright with the same calm gray as the river. Forgetting is not losing, the voice murmured. It is giving back what the heart once borrowed. The traveler bowed slightly to the river. The rain fell harder for a moment, as if acknowledging the gesture. The sound of it was steady, comforting, 1,000 small goodbyes, all spoken at once. As they walked on, the streets narrowed into an older part of town. Wooden houses leaned close together, their eaves dripping like steady metronomes. The traveler stopped before one house in particular, familiar, though they were certain they had never seen it. The sign above the gate read faintly in brushed ink, "The house where time sleeps." They hesitated, then pushed the gate open. The hinges gave a soft sigh. Inside, the courtyard was just as it had been in memory, leaves scattered across the moss, a faint golden light behind paper screens. But something had changed. The ticking was gone. The house was utterly silent. The traveler stepped inside. The air was cool, filled with the scent of old tatami and rain. The shelves still held dozens of clocks, but each one's hands rested perfectly still, as if holding their breath. The traveler called softly, "Are you here?" No answer. Only the distant rain, its rhythm spilling gently through the roof's thin cracks. Then, from the far end of the room, a faint voice, soft, tender, echoing as though from within the walls. "Time is not gone. It is only sleeping." The traveler turned toward the sound. There was no one there, and yet the air shimmered, as if stirred by an unseen hand. "Do not wake it," the voice said. "Just listen." The traveler stood still. Outside, the rain grew quieter, its sound now blending with something else, a low hum, a deep vibration that seemed to come from beneath the earth. It was not frightening. It felt alive, like a heartbeat shared by everything, by the houses, the river, the rain itself. The clocks, though unmoving, seemed to echo it faintly. The traveler realized they were hearing the sound of the world breathing, the space between seconds, the silence that carries all voices. In that stillness, the rain outside slowed even further, each drop falling like a word spoken in sleep. And within those drops, the traveler began to hear other voices, not from the past, not from memory, but from within themselves. Sleep gently, let it carry you, the rain remembers. The voices merged with the rain until there was no difference between them. Chapter 8 Voices Beneath the Rain Part 2. The rain continued, but it no longer sounded like weather. It was music now, a vast, slow, breathing rhythm that filled the space between thoughts. The traveler stood in the center of the old house, eyes half closed, listening to the invisible choir of droplets striking wood, earth, and leaf. Each sound seemed to carry a memory, and as the minutes drifted by, those memories began to take form not as images, but as presences. The air shimmered, and then, one by one, they appeared. The monk was first, kneeling once more before his stone canvas. The brush in his hand glowed faintly, each stroke a note in a melody only silence could complete. He did not look up, but his voice reached the traveler, as soft as breath. What is rain but the sky remembering the sea? The traveler nodded, though tears and rain were indistinguishable on their cheeks. The monk smiled, and the sound of his brush became the sound of falling water. Then the old man appeared not upon the river, but within it. The water rose to meet him, curling gently around his form like a living garment. He rested his hand upon the surface, and the ripples reached outward, touching every reflection, every forgotten hour. "You walk well," he said. "You have learned to listen." The traveler bowed. The old man chuckled softly, his voice like distant thunder smoothed by years. "Remember, all rivers end in silence, but none are lost." He placed his palm upon the traveler's chest, not in blessing, but in recognition, and in that touch, the traveler felt the river flowing through them. The sound of rain became the sound of water inside their veins. Light gathered behind them. When they turned, the old woman from the house of sleeping clocks stood near the doorway. She carried no umbrella. The rain passed through her hair like mist, and yet she was perfectly dry, as though made of stillness itself. In her hands, she held a single small clock, round, simple, unadorned. Its face was blank. Its hands were gone. She offered it to the traveler. "Take it," she said. "When you listen to rain, you'll know what time it is." The traveler hesitated. "But it has no hands." She smiled, the same patient, knowing smile that had calmed every hour within her walls. "That is why it will never hurry you. The traveler accepted the clock. It was warm, impossibly so, as if it held a sleeping heartbeat. The old woman faded into the rain, her voice lingering like a lullaby. When you breathe, the world moves with you. That is enough. The traveler closed their eyes. The rain thickened, its rhythm slower now, deeper, a sound vast enough to hold every voice that had ever spoken. And within that rain, the traveler began to hear something new. A child laughing, a friend's quiet farewell, the cry of a bird taking flight, the soft thud of a closing door. All the small sounds that make a life, each one returning, for just a moment, to say nothing more than we were here. The traveler let the sounds wash through them. There was no need to hold them, no fear of losing them again. Every drop of rain carried what had once been forgotten, and returned it to the soil with care. When the traveler opened their eyes again, the city had changed. The streets were no longer empty. People walked slowly beneath their umbrellas, faces serene, movements unhurried, as though the rain itself had taught them to breathe differently. The travelers stepped into the flow, their footsteps joining the quiet rhythm of the others. No one spoke, yet everyone seemed to understand the same language, the language of shared silence. The traveler passed a small shrine at the corner. There, a candle flickered beneath the eaves, protected from the rain by a broken tile. Its flame trembled, but did not die. The traveler paused, watching the smoke spiral upward, a thread of warmth rising through cool air. And in that moment, they realized something simple and vast: the rain was not falling on the city. It was falling through it, through time, through memory, through them. The traveler continued walking until they reached the edge of the city. The forest waited there, green and silver in the rainlight. Mist coiled among the trees like slow-moving breath. The path ahead was narrow, but the traveler no longer felt the need to choose where it led. They stood for a while, listening to the rain, to the earth, to the faint ticking of the clock in their palm. It did not mark seconds. It pulsed gently, like a living thing, as though echoing the rhythm of the rain itself. The traveler whispered, "Thank you." And somewhere, beyond sound, 1,000 quiet voices answered, in the rustle of leaves, in the breath of wind, in the final, infinite heartbeat of the storm. Sleep now. The rain softened. The forest dimmed to a slow twilight. And the traveler walked forward, not away from the world, but deeper into its dreaming heart. Their footsteps left no trace. Only ripples of sound, gentle, round, endless, as though the rain itself were humming them to sleep. Chapter 9: The Silence After Rain, Part 1. The rain ended sometime before dawn. No one saw it stop, there was simply a moment when the sound faded, and the air seemed to listen to itself. The traveler awoke to that stillness, a silence so complete that even breathing felt sacred. The paper screens glowed faintly with the first hint of morning. Beyond them, the world held its breath, as though waiting to remember how to move again. The traveler rose, opened the shoji, and stepped out onto the veranda. The garden was washed clean, every leaf beaded with pearls of light, every stone shining as if newly born. The moss was lush and trembling, and the sky, though still pale with mist, held the promise of something tender and unspoken. The traveler listened, and though there was no rain, they could still hear its memory, like a faint heartbeat within the silence. The city was slow to wake. From the veranda, the traveler could see smoke beginning to curl from the chimneys of distant houses. A temple bell rang once low, resonant, and infinitely patient. The sound spread like ripples across the quiet morning. Each echo dissolved gently into the mist. The traveler watched a single crow glide over the rooftops, its wings brushing the air like ink across paper. Even that small motion seemed softened, as though the world were wrapped in a layer of dream. They found themselves whispering, "I can still hear it." The words drifted away, but the silence answered not with sound, but with warmth. It was the same warmth that had lingered in the house of clocks, that had lived within the rhythm of rain, that had followed them through every forgotten name and passing hour. The traveler walked through the streets once more. The stones gleamed beneath their feet, dark and smooth with the memory of water. The air smelled of earth and cedar, and somewhere a kettle whistled softly, a sound so small, it filled the entire morning. The city seemed changed, though nothing was different. The same gates, the same bridges, the same narrow lanes twisting between wooden walls. And yet the traveler sensed that each thing, each droplet, each beam, each echo had been gently rearranged by the rain. It was as if the storm had taken everything apart, washed it in quiet, and set it back together in better order. When they reached the river, the surface lay smooth as glass. Mist drifted over it in long, slow ribbons, and sunlight touched the edges of the water like paint applied by a patient hand. The traveler leaned on the railing, watching the current glide beneath. The bridge was empty, but not lonely. Its silence felt full, a vessel brimming with unseen life. The traveler closed their eyes and heard it again, the river's voice, low and steady, speaking without words. Everything that falls returns. Nothing truly leaves. The message was not new, but it was clearer now, as though the rain had translated it into the traveler's own language. A single leaf floated past, its surface still glittering with tiny droplets. The traveler reached out and caught it gently between their fingers. It was impossibly light, as though it had forgotten the weight of the branch it once belonged to. They held it for a moment, then released it again. The current carried it away, turning slowly in the water until it vanished from sight. For a long time, the traveler remained there, listening to the soft conversation between river and wind. It was not a conversation of words, but of rhythms, a language of pauses, of patience, of presence. At last, the traveler turned from the river and began walking back through the city. In a narrow lane, they saw an old shopkeeper sweeping fallen petals from his doorway. He nodded as they passed. His broom made a soft, steady sound, a whisper against the damp stones. Swish, pause. Swish, pause. The rhythm reminded the traveler of rain again, and they smiled. Everywhere they went, they heard small echoes, not of sound, but of feeling. A window opening, a kettle sighing, a sparrow shaking its feathers dry. The world was returning to its gentle breathing. And with every breath, the traveler felt themselves becoming lighter, as if part of them were slowly dissolving into the morning air. When they reached the hill above the city, the mist began to lift. Kyoto stretched below, a sea of tiled roofs and winding streets, glistening in new light. The traveler sat on a stone bench beneath a maple tree. A few red leaves clung still to the branches, each one trembling faintly, not from wind, but from the quiet. The silence was no longer an absence. It was fullness, a harmony too deep to be heard, but easily felt. And in that stillness, the traveler realized something. The rain had never truly stopped. It had simply changed its form from sound to silence, from motion to rest, from water to breath. Chapter 9: The Silence After Rain, Part 2. The traveler remained beneath the maple tree long after the mist had lifted. The world was still wrapped in quiet, but it was no longer the quiet of absence, it was the quiet of arrival. Every breath, every glimmer of light, every shadow that moved across the cobblestones below felt like part of a vast, patient rhythm that had been playing since the beginning of time. The traveler listened, and in that listening, they began to hear it, the soundless sound that lives beneath all others. It was the hum of sunlight warming wet stone, the pulse of roots beneath soil, the faint vibration of a petal falling through air. It was the same tone that had been hidden in the ticking of clocks, in the chanting of monks, in the rain against the roofs. The traveler smiled. It was not a discovery, it was a remembrance. They rose from the bench and began to walk down the hill. Each step stirred tiny puffs of mist from the ground. Birds were beginning to sing again, their voices bright but unhurried, as if careful not to disturb the lingering dream of rain. The path wound through a grove of bamboo. The slender stalks swayed gently, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. The traveler passed through them slowly, and with every step, the air seemed to grow lighter, less like air, more like breath shared with the world itself. At the grove's end, a narrow bridge crossed a small stream. The traveler paused at its center. The water below was clear now, its surface unbroken except for the occasional ripple left by a falling leaf. They leaned over the railing, watching the reflection of the sky tremble and heal, again and again. It reminded them of their own journey, moments disturbed, moments stilled, each one returning eventually to calm. From somewhere nearby came the faint sound of a flute. It rose gently through the air, each note a circle that widened and faded into light. The traveler turned, and through the drifting mist, they saw an old man sitting by the path. His face was hidden beneath a broad straw hat, but his posture was easy, as though he had been waiting for them. He lowered the flute and spoke, his voice as soft as the first rain on leaves. "You have come far." The traveler bowed. "I don't know where I've come to." The old man smiled. "That is how one knows they've arrived." He gestured toward the horizon, the edge of the city glowing faintly gold beneath lifting clouds. "Everything after rain is a beginning," he said. "Even silence grows new roots." Then he raised the flute again and played. The melody was simple, but the traveler felt it stretch across the world, threading through temples, rivers, sleeping houses, through every drop that had ever fallen. It was the same song the rain had sung, only slower, only quieter, as though translated into the language of stillness. The traveler closed their eyes. The flute's voice mingled with the whisper of bamboo, with the rustle of distant trees, with the heartbeat of the earth itself. They could no longer tell where sound ended and silence began. In that seamless space, they felt every person they had met: the monk painting water on stone, the boatman on his quiet river, the old woman surrounded by clocks. They were all there, woven into the same rhythm. Not as memories, but as presences, each one resting, each one breathing within the stillness. The traveler opened their eyes. The old man was gone. Only the echo of his final note remained, curling softly in the morning air like smoke that refuses to fade. The traveler crossed the bridge, and on the other side, the path widened into an open field. The grass shimmered with dew. A single white heron lifted into the sky, its wings catching the first pure sunlight. For a long time, the traveler simply stood there, watching the bird disappear into the horizon. Then they looked down at their hands. In the right one, the small clock still without hands rested quietly, warm against their skin. It no longer pulsed. It no longer ticked. It simply was. The traveler smiled. That, they realized, was enough. They sat upon the grass and breathed. The air was cool, the silence deep, and somewhere beneath it all, a rhythm continued not outside, but within. Each heartbeat echoed the pulse of the world. Each breath carried the whisper of the rain. The traveler lay back, feeling the earth rise gently to meet them. The clouds drifted slowly across the pale sky. Light moved softly through the air, touching everything it could reach. And as their eyes began to close, the traveler felt the final boundary dissolve between waking and dream, between sound and stillness, between themselves and the world. In that moment, the silence spoke not in words, but in a single, endless breath. "You have returned." The traveler smiled once more, and the world, like a great heart finally at peace, breathed with them. The rain was gone. The silence remained. And in that silence, everything slept.